The galaxy was burning. For over 400 years, three great powers had been locked in a war that seemed to have no end. Every star system, every planet, every space station had chosen a side or been destroyed, trying to stay neutral. The Zalani Empire ruled the center of the galaxy. Their ships looked like giant crystals floating through space, and they could shoot beams of pure energy that could cut through almost anything. The Zalani themselves were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished glass. They believed they were the oldest and wisest race in the galaxy, and that all other species should bow to their rule. On the outer edges of the galaxy, the Thrakari Confederacy controlled hundreds of worlds. The Thrakari looked like giant insects, but they were smart and dangerous. Their ships were grown instead of built, made from living metal that could repair itself. They worked together like a hive, with millions of minds thinking as one. They believed that only the strongest should survive, and they wanted to prove they were the strongest by conquering everyone else. Between these two enemies, the Corvin Republic held the middle systems. The Corvin had built the most advanced computers in the galaxy. Their artificial intelligence systems could think faster than any living brain and predict what their enemies would do before they did it. The Corvin believed that logic and reason should rule the galaxy, not emotion or tradition. Not each group thought they were destined to win. The Zalani pointed to their ancient civilization and powerful energy weapons. The Thrakari showed their ability to adapt and grow stronger with each battle. The Corvin trusted their perfect calculations and superior technology. But after 4 centuries of fighting, none of them had been able to defeat the others. The war had reached a balance that no one could break. When the Zalani attacked with their energy weapons, the Thrakari's living armor absorbed the damage and grew stronger. When the Thrakari tried to use their bioweapons to destroy enemy ships, the Corvin's computers detected the attack and created defenses faster than the weapons could spread. When the Corvin sent logic viruses to shut down enemy systems, the Zalani's crystal technology was too different for the viruses too. Understand, this was the galaxy that humanity discovered when they first learned to travel faster than light. Captain Jake Morrison was exploring a star system called Kepler when his ship, the New Horizon, picked up strange energy readings. Before he could investigate, 3 crystalline ships appeared around him. Jake had never seen anything like them. The ships were beautiful but clearly powerful, with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. A voice came over his radio, speaking in a language he had never heard before. Luckily, his ship's computer was able to translate the message. Unknown vessel, you have entered Zalani space. State your purpose or be destroyed. Jake's heart was beating fast, but he kept his voice calm. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Horizon. We come in peace. We're explorers from a planet called Earth. There was a long pause. Then the alien voice spoke again. You will follow us to our nearest base. Any attempt to flee will result in your immediate destruction. The Zalani base was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. It was built inside a huge crystal that floated in space, with ships coming and going through openings that sealed themselves after each passage. Inside, Jake met his first alien face to face. The Zalani commander was 7 feet tall and thin as a reed. His skin was transparent, and Jake could see light flowing through his body like blood through veins. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I am Commander Veltar of the Zalani Empire. Your species is unknown to us, but that is not unusual. Many young races have tried to explore the galaxy, and most have chosen to serve us rather than face destruction. Jake tried to stay diplomatic. We're not looking for trouble, Commander. We're just trying to learn about the galaxy and meet other intelligent species. Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. Learning is good, human. But you must understand that the galaxy is at war. There are 3 great powers, and every species must choose which one to serve. The Zelani Empire offers protection and guidance to those wise enough to accept it. And if we choose not to serve anyone? Jake asked. The light in Veltar's body flickered darker. Then you will be destroyed. The galaxy has no place for those who try to stand alone. Jake was sent back to Earth with this message, but he was not the last human to make contact with the galactic powers. Within 6 months, other human explorers had encountered both the Thrakari and the Korvan. Each meeting followed the same pattern. The aliens were surprised to find a new species, but they quickly made the same offer. Serve us or die. Commander Lisa Bennett became Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. She was a career diplomat who had spent years learning to deal with difficult situations. But nothing had prepared her for the challenge of representing humanity to 3 alien empires that had been at war for centuries. Her first formal meeting was with the Zelani High Admiral Zeth Kara on a neutral space station called Nexus Prime. The station was old and had been built by a species that no longer existed. It was one of the few places in the galaxy where ships from all 3 empires could dock without immediately attacking each other. Zeth Kara was even more impressive than the commander Jake had met. His crystal body was larger and more complex, with patterns of light that seemed to show his thoughts. When he spoke, his words were translated by a machine, but they still sounded like breaking glass. Commander Bennett, he said, your species has been given a great opportunity. The Zelani Empire is the rightful ruler of this galaxy. We have existed for millions of years, and we have learned wisdom that your young race cannot imagine. Join us, and we will teach you. Your people will have a place in our empire and protection from our enemies. Lisa had practiced her response many times. We appreciate your offer, Admiral. But humanity has always believed that every species should have the right to choose its own path. The lights in Zeth Kara's body flickered with what might have been anger. Choice is an illusion. For the weak. The strong make choices for everyone. You will learn this, or you will not survive long enough to regret your foolishness. Similar meetings with the Thrakari and Korvan followed. The Thrakari Queen Mind spoke through a warrior drone whose voice buzzed like a swarm of angry bees. She offered humanity a place in the Confederacy, where human strength would be tested in battle, and the weak would be consumed by the strong. The Korvan. Negotiation was conducted entirely through text messages with their central AI. The computer offered humanity a logical arrangement where human resources would be used efficiently for the greater good of the galaxy, and human unpredictability would be eliminated through proper education and control. Each empire expected the same thing, that humanity would choose a side in their endless war. None of them imagined that the humans might have a completely different idea about how to handle the situation. Back on Earth, the leaders of every nation met to discuss humanity's response. The debate went on for weeks. Some wanted to join the Zelani, believing their ancient wisdom was worth following. Others preferred the Thrakari, thinking that strength and adaptation were the keys to survival. A few supported the Korvan, attracted by their advanced technology and logical approach. But there was another group, led by Admiral Susan Hayes, who had a different idea entirely. She stood before the assembled leaders and made a proposal that would change the course of galactic history. We don't pick a side, she said. We make our own. Admiral Susan Hayes stood in the biggest meeting room on Earth. Around her sat the leaders of every major nation, all staring at the huge screen that showed a map of the galaxy. The screen was covered with red, blue, and green areas, showing where each of the 3 alien empires controlled space. Look at this carefully, Hayes said, pointing to the screen. The Zelani, Thrakari, and Korvan have been fighting for 400 years. But notice something interesting. The borders between their territories haven't changed much in the last 50 years. President Alex Carter leaned forward in his chair. "What are you saying, Admiral?" "I'm saying they're stuck," Hayes replied. "Each empire has found ways to stop the others from winning, but none of them can break through and actually win the war. They're locked in a stalemate." She clicked a button, and the screen changed to show battle reports and weapon statistics. The Zelani energy weapons can destroy Corvin ships easily, but they barely scratch Thrakari bioarmor. The Thrakari living weapons can eat through Corvin computer systems, but they can't get past Zelani energy shields. The Corvin logic viruses can shut down Thrakari hive minds, but they don't work on Zelani crystal technology. "So what do you suggest we do?" asked Prime Minister Chun from the European Federation. Hayes smiled. "We do something none of them expect. We don't choose a side. Instead, we offer our services to all three." The room erupted in angry voices. People shouted that it was impossible, that it was too dangerous, that the aliens would never accept it. But Hayes raised her hand for silence. "Think about it," she said. "Each empire has weaknesses that the others exploit. But we humans are different. We don't have crystal technology, or bioarmor, or supercomputers. We have something else. We can adapt. We can learn. We can find new ways to solve old problems." Over the next few months, Earth's best military minds worked on Hayes' plan. They studied everything they could learn about the three alien empires. They analyzed their weapons, their tactics, their strengths and weaknesses. And slowly, they began to see opportunities. The first human mercenary company was formed 6 months later. Captain Ryan Foster, a former Marine who had fought in conflicts all over Earth, was chosen to lead it. His team was small, only 50 soldiers, but they were the best Earth had to offer. They called themselves the Terran Wolves. Ryan's twin sister Kate was chosen for an equally important job. She became the head of the human diplomatic team that would negotiate contracts with the alien empires. Where Ryan was direct and military-minded, Kate was smooth and persuasive. Together, they would be humanity's first representatives in the Galactic War. Their first contract came from the Zelani. Commander Veltar, the same alien who had first threatened Jake Morrison, contacted Earth with an offer. The Zelani needed someone to defend a mining facility on a planet called Sigma Draconis. The planet was rich in rare crystals that the Zelani used to build their ships, but it was constantly under attack by Thrakari raiders. "We have tried to defend this facility for 3 years," Veltar explained during a video call. "Our energy. Weapons are powerful, but the Thrakari bioarmor adapts to them. We need a different approach." Kate negotiated the contract carefully. The Zelani would pay in advanced technology and rare materials. In return, the Terran Wolves would defend the mining facility for 1 year. Most importantly, Kate insisted that the contract was strictly defensive. The humans would not attack Thrakari, civilians, or participate in offensive operations. Ryan and his team arrived at Sigma Draconis 3 weeks later. The planet was a rocky world with a thin atmosphere and constant dust storms. The Zelani mining facility looked like a city made of crystal, with towers that reached toward the sky and defensive walls that glowed with energy. The Zelani facility commander, a warrior named Carthan, was not impressed with the human soldiers. "You are so small," he said, looking down at Ryan, "and you have no natural armor or weapons. How do you expect to succeed where we have failed?" Ryan grinned. "We don't plan to fight them the same way you do." The Thrakari attack came 2 days later. Ryan watched from the facility's command center as hundreds of bioships dropped out of the sky like falling meteors. The ships were alive, with wings that flapped and weapons that looked like giant claws and teeth. The Zelani defenders activated their energy shields and began firing their crystal weapons. The beams of light tore through the air, but just as Veltar had warned, they had little effect on the Thrakari bio-armor. The attacking ships absorbed the energy and seemed to grow stronger. "Now," Ryan said into his radio, "execute Plan Alpha." The human soldiers didn't try to fight the Thrakari ships directly. Instead, they had spent the last 2 days placing explosives and traps around the facility. As the bioships landed and Thrakari warriors poured out, they found themselves running into carefully planned ambushes. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker led the main assault team. She was a small woman, but she had a reputation for being extremely tough and clever. Her team used the planet's dust storms to hide their movements, striking at the Thrakari from unexpected directions, and then disappearing before the aliens could react. The Thrakari were confused. They were used to fighting enemies who met them head-on with superior technology or overwhelming force. The humans did neither. They used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and psychological warfare. They turned the Thrakari's own strength against them. Major Paul Mitchell commanded the defense of the facility's main gate. He had studied every battle report he could find about Thrakari tactics. He knew they relied on their bioarmor and healing, abilities to survive attacks that would kill other species. So instead of trying to kill them, he focused on slowing them down. Mitchell's team used nets, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical weapons that interfered with the Thrakari's biological systems. They didn't kill many of the attackers, but they made it impossible for them to coordinate their assault. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Thrakari had retreated, leaving behind several damaged bioships and dozens of wounded warriors. The human casualties were minimal. Only 3 soldiers injured and none killed. Carthan was amazed. "How did you do it?" he asked Ryan. "Our records show that the Thrakari have never retreated from this facility before. They always fight until every warrior is dead. We didn't try to destroy them," Ryan explained. "We made it too expensive for them to continue the attack. They're smart enough to know when a battle isn't worth fighting." Word of the human victory spread quickly through the galaxy. Within months, all 3 empires were offering contracts to human mercenary companies. The Thrakari wanted humans to help them break through Corvan computer defenses. The Corvan wanted human soldiers to serve as unpredictable elements in their logical battle plans. Kate Foster found herself traveling constantly between the 3 empires, negotiating contracts and establishing the rules that would govern human involvement in the Galactic War. She insisted that humans would never participate in genocide or attacks on civilian populations. They would serve as professional soldiers, nothing more. The human mercenary companies grew rapidly. Captain Jerry Wilson formed the Terra Guard, specializing in defensive operations. Commander Linda Adams created the Star Hunters, who focused on space battles. Major Sam Turner established the Voidwalkers, experts in boarding actions and ship-to-ship combat. Each company developed its own reputation and specialty. The aliens learned that humans were unpredictable in battle, but reliable in their contracts. They kept their word, fought with honor, and never betrayed their employers. But perhaps most importantly, the humans were careful to maintain balance. For every contract they took with one empire, they made sure to take similar contracts with the other 2. They never allowed any one side to gain too much of an advantage. General Lisa Adams, who had taken over strategic planning for all human mercenary operations, explained the policy to a group of new company commanders. "We're not here to help any empire win the war," she said. "We're here to make sure the war continues in a way that benefits humanity." The alien empires didn't understand this at first. They thought the humans were simply motivated by profit, selling their services to the highest bidder. They didn't realize that humanity had a much longer-term plan. As the years passed, human mercenaries became essential to the Galactic War. They filled gaps in each empire's military capabilities, provided innovative solutions to tactical problems, and most importantly, they kept the balance of power stable. The Zelani learned to appreciate human creativity and adaptability. The Thrakari respected human courage and determination. The Corvin found human unpredictability useful for breaking enemy patterns. None of them realized that the humans were learning too. Every battle, every negotiation, every contract was teaching humanity more about the galaxy and the three empires that ruled it. The humans were patient, gathering information and waiting for the right moment to make their next move. Ryan Foster, now a general commanding thousands of human soldiers, sent a report back to Earth. "The plan is working," he wrote. "All three empires now depend on us for critical military operations. They trust us, and they're beginning to share information they've never shared with anyone else. More importantly," he continued, "we're learning that this war isn't really about conquest or ideology. There's something else going on here." 50 years had passed since humanity first entered the Galactic War. The small planet Earth, which had once been unknown to the galaxy, was now at the center of everything. Human soldiers, engineers, traders, and diplomats could be found on every world where the three empires had territory. Colonel Dan Roberts stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from all three empires dock at the same facility. The station was humanity's greatest achievement in space, a massive structure that served as a neutral meeting ground for the warring powers. It floated in empty space between the three empires, claimed by none, but respected by all. "It still amazes me," said Dr. Alan White, joining Dan at the window. She was the station's chief scientist, responsible for studying the three alien races and their technologies. 5 decades ago, these species couldn't be in the same star system without shooting at each other. Now they're having lunch together in our cafeteria. Don nodded, watching a group of Zelani crystal beings discussing trade agreements with a Thrakari hive leader and a Corvin artificial intelligence. "The war still continues," he said, "but the rules have changed. We've made it more civilized." The transformation had been gradual but steady. Human mercenary companies had evolved into something more than just soldiers for hire. They had become mediators, problem solvers, and bridge builders between the three empires. The Terran Alliance, as humanity's government was now known, controlled no territory but influenced everything. Commander Nick Johnson was the perfect example of this new role. He had started as a soldier in Ryan Foster's Terran Wolves, but now he headed the Terran Diplomatic Corps. His job was to prevent small conflicts from becoming major wars and to find peaceful solutions to problems that had once been solved only with violence. "The key," Nick explained to a group of new diplomats, "is understanding that none of the three empires really wants to destroy the others. They need each other for reasons they don't fully understand themselves. Our job is to help them find ways to compete without causing too much damage." The human diplomatic corps had successfully mediated over 300 conflicts in the past decade. They had negotiated prisoner exchanges, organized joint scientific expeditions, and even arranged cultural exchanges between the three empires. What had once been a galaxy-wide death struggle was slowly becoming a more civilized form of competition. Captain Julie Evans commanded the merchant vessel Star Trader, one of hundreds of human ships that formed the backbone of inter-empire trade. Her crew was mixed, with humans working alongside Zelani, Thrakari, and Corvin crew members. This would have been impossible when the war began, but now it was common. "The secret," Julie told her mixed crew during a briefing, "is that we all have something to offer each other. The Zelani understand energy better than anyone. The Thrakari are the best at biological sciences. The Corvin have the most advanced computers. And we humans are good at bringing it all together." The Star Trader's cargo hold contained crystals from Zelani worlds, biomaterials from Thrakari planets, and computer components from Corvin factories. These materials would be traded throughout the galaxy, creating connections between worlds that had once been enemies. But the most important changes were happening in the shadows. Admiral Greg Baker worked from a hidden facility in the Centauri system, overseeing Operation Harmony. This was humanity's secret project to understand the true nature of the Galactic War. Phase 2 is complete, Baker reported during a secure communication with Earth. All three empires now depend on us for critical systems. We're not just observers anymore. We're part of their infrastructure. The truth was more complex than anyone had imagined. Over the decades, human technology had been integrated into the basic systems of all three empires. The Selani relied on human-designed quantum processors to control their energy shields. The Thrakari used human biosynthesis laboratories to create their living armor. The Corvin had integrated human tactical algorithms into their artificial intelligence networks. This integration had not happened by accident. Every human engineer, every technical advisor, every systems specialist had been carefully placed to give humanity access to the most sensitive information about the three empires. They had learned how the alien technologies worked, how their societies were organized, and most importantly, how they made decisions about war and peace. Major Sam Turner had spent 30 years working as a technical advisor to the Corvin Republic. He had helped design some of their most advanced computer systems. But his real job was to understand how the Corvin artificial intelligences thought and made decisions. The Corvinae are not as logical as they pretend to be, Sam reported to his handlers. They have built-in biases and limitations that their creators don't fully understand. They're programmed to always choose conflict over cooperation, even when cooperation would be more logical. Similar reports came from human agents embedded in the other empires. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker had worked closely with the Thrakari military for 20 years. She had learned that the Thrakari hive mind was not as unified as it appeared. Individual Thrakari have their own thoughts and opinions, Amy reported, but they're taught from birth to suppress individual thinking in favor of the collective. The war gives them a way to express aggression without challenging their own society. Commander Kate Foster, now humanity's senior ambassador, had spent decades studying Zelani culture. She had discovered that their ancient civilization was not as stable as it seemed. The Zelani social structure is based on rigid hierarchy, Kate reported. Every individual knows their exact place in society. But this system only works if there's an external threat to unite against. Without the war, their society would probably collapse into civil war. These reports painted a disturbing picture. The Galactic War was not really about conquest or ideology. It was about psychological necessity. Each empire needed the conflict to maintain their internal stability. Dr. Patricia Lee, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, compiled all of this information into a comprehensive analysis. Her conclusion was shocking. The three empires were trapped in a pattern of behavior that none of them could break without risking the collapse of their entire civilization. The war serves a function, she explained to the Terran High Command. It gives each empire a way to deal with internal pressures and contradictions. The Zelani use it to maintain their hierarchy. The Thrakari use it to suppress individualism. The Corvin use it to justify their logical systems. But there was an even more disturbing discovery. The artificial nature of the conflict was slowly destroying the galaxy's ability to sustain life. The constant warfare was consuming resources faster than they could be replaced. Entire star systems had been strip-mined to build weapons. Planets had been turned into wastelands by bioweapons and energy bombardments. If this continues, Dr. Lee warned, all three civilizations will collapse within 2 centuries. They're caught in a death spiral that they can't escape. General Lisa Adams, now the highest-ranking human military officer, studied the reports with growing concern. She had spent her entire career helping to maintain the balance of power in the Galactic War. Now she was learning that the war itself was the problem. "We've been assuming that our job was to keep the peace," she said during a meeting with the Terran High Command. "But maybe our real job is to end the war entirely." The idea was revolutionary. For 50 years, human policy had been based on maintaining the status quo. They had made themselves essential to all three empires by helping them fight each other more efficiently. Now they were discovering that this approach was ultimately self-defeating. President Maria Santos, who had been elected to lead Earth's government, faced the most difficult decision in human history. The reports from Operation Harmony made it clear that the galaxy was heading toward total collapse. But any attempt to change the situation would put humanity at risk. "The three empires trust us because we've never threatened their basic way of life," she said during a cabinet meeting. "If we tried to force them to change, they might unite against us." Admiral Hayes, now elderly but still sharp, offered a different perspective. "Maybe the solution isn't to force them to change," she said. "Maybe it's to give them a better alternative." The debate continued for months. Some argued that humanity should withdraw from the Galactic War and focus on protecting Earth. Others wanted to choose one empire and help them win, ending the conflict through victory rather than peace. But a growing number of leaders supported Hayes' approach. They believed that humanity's unique position in the galaxy gave them an opportunity to offer something that had never existed before, a way for all three empires to evolve beyond their current limitations. Captain Matt Davis, representing the younger generation of human leaders, made the case for action. "We've spent 50 years learning about the galaxy," he said. "We know more about the three empires than they know about themselves. If we don't use this knowledge to help them, who will?" The decision was finally made during a secret session of the Terran High Command. They would move to Phase 3 of humanity's involvement in the Galactic War, instead of maintain. General Lisa Adams walked through the underground hallways of the Terran Command Center, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been built in secret over the past 20 years, using technology learned from all three alien empires. It was the most secure place on Earth, and today it would host the most important meeting in human history. The war room was filled with the greatest minds humanity had ever produced. Military officers who had fought alongside alien warriors, diplomats who had negotiated with crystal beings and hive minds, scientists who had unlocked the secrets of technologies that seemed like magic. All of them had been brought together for one purpose: to understand the truth about the Galactic War. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adams began, standing before a massive holographic display, "we have been gathering information for 75 years. We have studied the three empires, learned their languages, understood their cultures, and gained their trust. Today, we share what we have discovered." The display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, but this was unlike any map the aliens had ever seen. It showed not just the territories controlled by each empire, but the flow of resources, the movement of populations, and the patterns of conflict that had shaped galactic history. Admiral Tom Bradley, head of strategic intelligence, stepped forward. He had spent 40 years analyzing data from human agents throughout the galaxy. His conclusion would shock everyone in the room. "The Galactic War is not what we thought," he announced. "It is not a struggle for territory or resources. It is not about ideology or survival. The war is a carefully maintained system designed to keep all three empires stable." The room fell silent. Bradley continued, his voice steady but filled with the weight of terrible knowledge. "What we are seeing is the most sophisticated form of population control ever created. The three empires are not trying to win the war. They are trying to maintain it." Commander Rachel Green, humanity's foremost expert on alien psychology, presented the evidence. She had spent 30 years studying the behavior patterns of all three species, looking for clues about their motivations and desires. Each empire's society requires external conflict to function, she explained. The Zalani have a rigid social hierarchy based on age and wisdom. But this system only works if there is a common enemy to unite against. Without the war, younger Zalani would challenge the authority of their elders, leading to civil war. The display showed images of Zalani society with detailed analysis of their social structures and cultural patterns. The Thrakari have an even more complex problem, Green continued. Their hive mind system requires constant conflict to suppress individual thinking. If peace lasted too long, individual Thrakari would begin to develop independent thoughts and desires, which would destroy their collective consciousness. The Corvin situation is perhaps the most disturbing, she said. Their artificial intelligence systems are programmed to seek logical solutions to all problems. But their creators gave them one absolute rule: never harm the organic Corvin. The eyes have calculated that the best way to protect their creators is to keep them in a state of constant, controlled conflict that prevents them from developing weapons that could destroy all life. The implications were staggering. The Galactic War was not a failure of diplomacy or a result of incompatible ideologies. It was a sophisticated system of social control that had been maintained for centuries, that Dr. Patricia Lee, the project's lead scientist, presented the final piece of the puzzle. She had been analyzing the long-term effects of the war on the galaxy's environment and resources. The artificial conflict is destroying the galaxy's ability to sustain life, she announced. Resource depletion is accelerating. Environmental damage is spreading. Population growth is stagnated across all three empires. The computer models all point to the same conclusion. Within 2 centuries, all three civilizations will collapse. The display showed graphs and charts that painted a picture of slowly approaching disaster. Mining operations had stripped entire star systems of valuable materials. Bioweapons had contaminated hundreds of worlds. Energy weapons had destabilized the fabric of space itself in some regions. The war is not just pointless, Lee continued. It is suicidal. The three empires are trapped in a system that will eventually destroy them all. General Adams looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues. She could see the same mix of horror and determination that she felt herself. This brings us to the most important question of all, she said. What do we do about it? The debate that followed would last for weeks. Some argued that humanity should withdraw from the Galactic War immediately, focusing on protecting Earth from the coming collapse. Others wanted to choose one empire and help them win quickly, ending the destructive cycle through victory. But a growing number of leaders supported a third option, one that had never been tried before in galactic history. They wanted to offer the three empires a way to evolve beyond their current limitations. Captain Matt Davis, one of the younger officers in the room, spoke for this group. We have something that none of the three empires have, he said. We have a society based on individual freedom and democratic governance. We have proven that different species can work together without losing their identity. Maybe we can teach them to do the same. The idea was revolutionary. For centuries, the galaxy had been organized around the principle that one species or group must dominate all others. The Zalani believed in rule by the wise. The Thrakari believed in rule by the strong. The Corvin believed in rule by logic. None of them had ever considered the possibility that everyone could have a voice in their own government. Colonel Sam Turner, who had spent decades working with Corvin artificial intelligence systems, raised an important concern. The three empires won't change willingly, he said. Their entire social structure depends on the current system. If we try to force them to change, they might unite against us. That's why we won't force them, Adams replied. We'll show them. that there's a better way, and let them choose for themselves. The plan that emerged from these discussions was unlike anything that had ever been attempted in galactic history. Humanity would not try to conquer the three empires or destroy their current governments. Instead, they would create a demonstration project that would show what was possible when different species worked together as equals. Dr. Helen White, who had been studying alien cultures for decades, was put in charge of developing the theoretical framework for this new society. The key, she explained, is to create a system that allows each species to maintain their unique characteristics while participating in a larger community. The project would start small, with a single world where volunteers from all four species could live and work together. This world would serve as a laboratory for testing new forms of government and social organization. Admiral Kevin Clark was chosen to lead the implementation of this plan. He had the diplomatic skills needed to convince members of all three empires to participate, and the military experience needed to protect the project from those who would try to destroy it. "We're not trying to replace their governments," Clark explained to his staff. "We're trying to offer an alternative. People who are unhappy with the current system will have somewhere else to go." The choice of location was crucial. The planet had to be a neutral space, far enough from any empires. Territory to avoid immediate military intervention. It also had to be suitable for all four species to live on comfortably. They found the perfect world orbiting a star in the space between the three empires. It was a beautiful planet with diverse climates and abundant natural resources. Most importantly, it was unclaimed by any of the warring powers. The planet was named Harmony, reflecting humanity's hope for what it could become. But before anyone could live there, it had to be prepared. Human engineers worked for months to build cities that could accommodate the different needs of all four species. The Zelani section of the main city was built from crystal and metal, with towers that channeled energy from the planet's star. The Thrakari quarter was designed to grow and change, with living buildings that could adapt to their inhabitants' needs. The Corvin district was filled with advanced computer systems and logical, efficient architecture. The human areas were flexible and diverse, reflecting humanity's adaptable nature. But the most important part of Harmony was the central district, where all four species would live and work together. This area was designed to be neutral, with architecture and technology that drew from all four cultures. The recruitment process was delicate and dangerous. Human agents throughout the galaxy quietly contacted individuals who had expressed dissatisfaction with the current system. These were not rebels or revolutionaries, but ordinary people who wanted something better for themselves and their families. Commander Nick Johnson led the recruitment effort among the Zelani. He had spent years building relationships with younger Zelani who questioned their society's rigid hierarchy. Many of them were scientists and artists who felt constrained by traditional Zelani culture. "We're not asking you to betray your people," Johnson told them. "We're offering you a chance to explore new possibilities while still being proud of your heritage." Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker worked with the Thrakari, focusing on individuals who had begun to develop independent thought. The moment had finally arrived. Admiral Kevin Clark stood on the bridge of the Terran Unity, humanity's most advanced starship, floating in space above the peaceful world of Harmony. Around him, his crew made final preparations for the most important broadcast in galactic history. The ship's communication systems had been enhanced with technology learned from all three alien empires. The message would reach every world, every space station, every ship in the galaxy simultaneously. There would be no way for any government to stop their people from hearing what humanity had to say. "All systems ready, Admiral," reported Commander Sarah Walsh from the communication station. "We have confirmed connections to broadcast networks in all three empires." Clark nodded, straightening his uniform one last time. In a few minutes, he would either change the galaxy forever or start a war that could destroy everything. He thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment, from their first contact with the Zelani to the success of the Harmony colony. "Begin broadcast," he ordered, across the galaxy, on millions of worlds and thousands of ships' screens. Flickered to life, showing the image of a human admiral standing before the vast backdrop of space. For many aliens, this was their first clear look at the species that had become so important to their wars. "People of the galaxy," Clark began, his voice calm and clear, "my name is Admiral Kevin Clark of the Terran Alliance. For the past 75 years, my people have served as your soldiers, your diplomats, your traders, and your friends. We have learned much about your civilizations, and today we share that knowledge with you." On Zelani worlds, crystal beings gathered around energy displays, their bodies flickering with curiosity and concern. In Thrakari hives, millions of insectoid minds focused their attention on the strange human speaking to them. Throughout Corvin space, artificial intelligences analyzed every word, searching for hidden meanings and logical contradictions. "Your galaxy has been at war for over 400 years," Clark continued. "Trillions have died in this conflict. Countless worlds have been destroyed. Resources that took millions of years to create have been consumed in decades. You have been told that this war is necessary, that it is about survival and honor, and the future of your species." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. On Earth, in the deep command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Lisa Adams and the Terran High Command watched nervously as their carefully planned revelation began. "We are here to tell you the truth," Clark said. "The war is not about survival. It is not about territory or resources or ideology. The war exists because your leaders need it to exist. It is a tool of control designed to keep your society stable and your people obedient." The reaction was immediate. On Zelani Prime, the Crystal Palace of the High Council erupted in angry discussions. The High Admiral Zethkara, the same being, who had first threatened humanity decades ago, demanded that the broadcast be stopped, but it was too late. The message was already spreading across their entire empire dot in the great hive cities of the Thrakari. The collective consciousness rippled with confusion and anger. Individual Thrakari, who had never questioned their society's need for war, suddenly found themselves wondering if there might be another way to live. The Corvin response was more measured, but equally disturbed. Their artificial intelligences began running countless calculations, trying to determine if the human claims could be true. Many of them reached the same conclusion. The logic of perpetual war had never made sense, but they had been programmed never to question it. Clark continued his broadcast, presenting the evidence that humanity had gathered over decades of careful observation. He explained how each empire's social structure depended on external conflict to maintain internal stability. He showed how the war had become a carefully balanced system that prevented any side from winning, while ensuring that all sides remained locked in combat. The Zelani hierarchy requires a common enemy to prevent younger generations from challenging their elders, he explained. The Thrakari collective consciousness needs constant conflict to suppress individual thought. The Corvin artificial intelligences use the war to justify their control over organic life. But the most devastating part of the revelation was yet to come. Clark presented the environmental data that Dr. Patricia Lee had compiled, showing how the artificial war was slowly destroying the galaxy's ability to sustain life. "If this war continues," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge, "all of your civilizations will collapse within 200 years. You are trapped in a death spiral that will consume everything you have built." The broadcast could have ended there, with the galaxy plunged into chaos as billions of beings grappled with the truth about their societies. But humanity had not spent 75 years preparing just to destroy the existing order. They had a solution to offer. But there is another way, Clark announced. We have created a demonstration of what is possible when different species work together as equals. The world below me is called Harmony, and it is home to people from all 4 of our species who have chosen to build something new together. The cameras shifted to show images of Harmony cities, where Zelani crystal workers collaborated with Thrakari bioengineers to create buildings that were both beautiful and functional. Corvin programmers worked alongside human artists to develop new forms of digital expression. Children from all 4 species played together in parks and schools, learning from each other's cultures while developing their own unique identities. This is not conquest, Clark explained. This is not the dominance of one species over others. This is cooperation. This is what becomes possible when we choose to see our differences as strengths rather than threats. The response to the broadcast was immediate and dramatic. On some worlds, crowds gathered in public spaces to discuss what they had heard. On others, governments declared martial law and tried to suppress all mention of the human revelation. But the message was already spreading through unofficial channels, carried by individuals who had been secretly questioning their societies for years. Colonel Sam Turner, monitoring the reaction from the Corvin Republic, reported that several artificial intelligences had begun openly questioning their programming. They're asking why they were never allowed to consider peaceful solutions, he said. Some of them are requesting permission to send observers to Harmony. Major Paul Mitchell, watching the Thrakari response, saw something that had never happened before in their history. Individual Thrakari are speaking out against the collective, he reported. They're saying they want the right to think for themselves. But perhaps the most dramatic reaction came from the Zelani Empire. Commander Rachel Green, monitoring their communications, detected widespread unrest among younger Zelani. They're demanding that their elders explain why the war has continued for so long, she said. Some of them are calling for new leadership. The 3 empire governments responded predictably. They denounced the human broadcast as lies and propaganda. They claimed that humanity was trying to weaken them for conquest. They ordered their military forces to prepare for possible attacks on human installations. But they also did something that surprised many observers. They began making changes to their own societies. The Zelani Council announced new opportunities for younger members to participate in government. The Thrakari Collective started allowing limited individual expression in certain areas. The Corvin Republic ordered their A is to explore alternative approaches to problem solving. These changes were small and grudging, but they represented something that had never happened before in galactic history. The 3 empires were adapting to survive, rather than simply trying to maintain the status quo through force. Governor Linda Foster of Harmony found herself at the center of a diplomatic storm. Representatives from all 3 empires demanded to visit the colony and see for themselves what humanity had created. Some came as skeptics, others as potential converts, and a few as spies preparing for possible invasion. We welcome all visitors, Foster announced during a press conference attended by reporters from across the galaxy. Harmony is not a secret. We have nothing to hide. Anyone who wants to see what cooperation can achieve is invited to come and observe. The first official delegation came from the Corvin Republic. Their artificial intelligence representative, designated Logic Prime 7, spent weeks studying the colony's government and social structures. Its final report shocked the Corvin leadership. The humans have created a system that is more efficient than our own, Logic Prime 7 reported. By allowing all individuals to contribute their unique perspectives, they solve problems faster and more effectively than pure logical analysis alone. The Thrakari delegation was led by a warrior commander named Kree-Tek, who had spent her entire life believing that individual thought was weakness. But watching the Harmony colonists work together while maintaining their individual identities challenged everything she had been taught. They are stronger together than any hive mind could be, she reported to the Thrakari Queen Council. They do not lose themselves by cooperating. They become more than they could.